All right, I want to welcome everyone to this week's meeting of the Northern New England chapter of SABR. And this week, we have another very, very special guest. Loren Foxx has been a utility player throughout his professional career, wearing several different uniforms before landing in professional baseball, where he has served as a broadcaster, corporate sales director, vice president of marketing, and a general manager. Loren now owns his own digital marketing firm here in New Hampshire and is a member of the New Hampshire House of Representatives. He plays, watches, and coaches baseball, including his daughter, Maggie. And he's the junior varsity coach here in New Hampshire at Bedford High School. Loren is also a Major League Baseball official scorer, one of three, I believe, presently in Boston. Loren Foxx, normally I'd say welcome to Northern New England, but you live here. How you doing?
I live here, dude. Yes. Thank you, Bruce. I really appreciate everybody having me. It's really funny that recording announcement is a shock to the system because all of a sudden I thought, all right, everything that I'm going to be said could wind up on Twitter. I see Bill wagging his finger at me, so I think I have Bill to thank for this. Bill sits in the row right above me, usually with Dave from Fangraphs, and so I've gotten to know him over the years just by sitting at Fenway Park and maybe a couple, 3 times a game, actually having to think and make a decision that matters. A lot of the time it's pretty cut and dry. But so what I didn't think about when I scheduled this whole thing was I'm Jewish. Tonight's the end of Yom Kippur. And so I guess I'm not as good of a Jew as Sandy Koufax because if I was really truly observant, I'd be in synagogue instead. I made dinner so that my wife could break the fast. She was the only one of us that was actually doing it this year. So, I figured I should accommodate her and make some good stuff for her. So, Jeff is on the call as well. So,
says, Me too.
Been there, done that. Usually what I wind up doing on Yom Kippur, and Jeff, you're probably guilty of the same thing, is I would be good through the night, wake up in the morning and have a bowl of cereal and then go, crap, I completely screwed that one up. And then all bets are off. Passover is even worse, where you're sitting there thinking, I'm not going to have any bread, pasta, nothing. And, somebody asks you to lunch and you go to a Chinese place. The next thing you know, you're eating lo mein. So, anyway, that's neither here nor there. My background, and I do have slides prepared. And so I'll go through kind of my background in baseball. Truly, the reason that I'm here is the official scorer piece, which is kind of a weird gig. And so we'll talk a little bit about how that whole thing materialized. And then the other thing I want to talk about before we get into that is women's baseball, which is something that I'm particularly passionate about as well. So and at any point in time, if you want to pop questions into the chat, if Bruce has everybody unmuted and you just want to ask the question, it's fine by me. Like this is not the most structured process. So with that in mind, I will start here, and if I can actually make it into a slideshow, that would be even more phenomenal. So, all right, well, that thing loads. We're good. Everybody can see the screen?
Yep.
Dandy. All right. So I am, and maybe you figured it out, maybe you didn't. I'm not from here originally. I'm from here now. But originally I am from Southern California. Grew up in a town called Newport Beach. That's, I was like 4 miles from the ocean. Went to school at the University of Southern California, had some opportunities in college to get to broadcast some, took some amazing sports broadcasting classes, and loved doing it. For some reason, with all that together, I decided that it would be a good idea to major in accounting. So left college when I was done, went to work with a big 6 accounting firm. And then after that, got really bored with accounting really quick. Sorry if anybody on here is an accountant. It all kind of ties into what I do now, oddly enough, but went to work as a pharmaceutical representative and knew that I loved broadcasting and knew that I loved sports. And so on the side, I broadcast football for the high school that I had gone to. And one summer I worked a real job and broadcast as many games for the Mission Viejo Vigilantes in the old Western League, which was an independent league. That was 1998. And for some reason, kind of put that on the back burner for a couple of years. That I loved it. Absolutely. There's to me, there's nothing better than sitting and getting to talk about a baseball game for 3 hours, or now like 2 hours and 20 minutes or 2.5 hours. But regardless, and so in 2002, or right at the end of 2001, met my wife. We were having some conversations about what would you do if you could do anything, and I said, well, I want to broadcast baseball. And so I gave up like a good job and a career track to make $500 a month, riding buses up and down the Eastern Seaboard in the South Atlantic League. And great summer, absolutely loved it. We didn't have kids yet. My wife would on Thursdays and Saturdays tend bar at the ballpark, and I would go down the line and I would hang out with her on the innings that I wasn't broadcasting. And it was always funny. She would get her paycheck for bartending for 2 nights a week, and her paycheck for doing that was bigger than my paycheck of being a full-time employee for the team. But I will tell you this: there have been fewer, more fun experiences that I've had in baseball doing that, where like that was what our summer was. We were just at a ballpark every day. I somehow still haven't figured out how this one happened. Lucked my way into a job with a team called the Kansas City T-Bones in the Northern League. So Hagerstown in the South Atlantic League was the Giants' low A affiliate. All of you are probably familiar with Matt Cain or Merkin Valdez before his name got changed to Manuel Mateo, or Brad Hennessy, Matt Palmer, who was with the Angels for a little bit, Steve Holm, who was with the Giants and the Twins. We had a bunch of dudes on that team who were in the major leagues. Just like so much fun riding the buses with those guys. And I was still young enough. I was in my late 20s. I would get off the bus and people would have baseballs or cards and ask me to sign stuff. And I would say, "Are you sure that you want this?" Yeah, we need your autograph. You're gonna look at a roster and you're cross-reference this, and it's gonna devalue the thing that you're having me sign, but whatever, I'm happy to oblige. So 2004 wound up getting an amazing job with an independent minor league team called the Kansas City T-Bones. The T-Bones were in Kansas City, Kansas. The Royals, for anybody who knows Kansas City, you have this big loop around the city called 435. I-70 basically bisects the city, and the T-Bones are on the west side of things and the Royals are on the east side of things. But we got to do a bunch of really fun stuff there, broadcasting. Actually, my intern in Hagerstown is now the voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers. My intern in Kansas City is now the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, if anybody is a Reds fan and listens to their games. If you don't, I highly recommend it. His name is Tommy Thrall. Wonderful broadcaster, great human being. But we got away with doing so many things because it was independent ball. There was another team in the league that had a reality show. We had probably the best fight that you would have ever seen in a baseball game, regardless of level. I felt like half our team got suspended. The season basically, for all intents and purposes, ended at that point. And then we also we did a promotion where we tried to play the last 2 innings of a game on an Xbox, which the baseball purists hated. In fact, even though we weren't affiliated with Major League Baseball, MLB came in at that point and shut us down and said, "You guys can't do this promotion." So we modified what the promotion was. We had a sponsor that was paying for it. We still got national notoriety for that. Oddly enough, in Hagerstown, we had won the promotion of the year for giving a funeral away, a pre-planned funeral away. So, and then with Kansas City, really the most fun thing that we got to do, if anybody's familiar with, and I am probably preaching to people who've watched it way more than I ever have, Ken Burns baseball, the Negro League segments when they talk about Buck O'Neill. Got to know Buck really well during my time with the T-Bones. We had a drive because in 2006 he had not been elected to the Hall of Fame, and we did a petition drive to try to get him into the Hall of Fame. And we wound up with about 20,000 signatures back before the internet was as widely used as it is now. And really put this gigantic effort out there along with Bob Kendrick, who's the president of the Negro Leagues Museum, and really made a mark with that. And by the time all was said and done, they didn't have Buck in the hall yet. He's there now. But they had Buck as the greeter. If anybody's been to Cooperstown and seen the statue of Buck O'Neill, we played a small part in getting that done. I think it would have happened regardless, but it was such a thrill to be able to experience that, be with Buck, and on days he was 94 that year. He took an at bat for us in the Northern League, which was amazing. Like, was fitter than most people I know who are 30 years younger. There was the day of the All-Star game. It was 100 degrees, 100 or 105 degrees, 100% humidity, and everybody's sweating and complaining. And Buck is sitting there acting like nothing's going on. And me and Tommy were doing, or Tommy and I were on field emceeing the Legends game and a home run derby. So we had guys like Amos Otis and Vida Blue was out there with us, Lee Smith, Willie Wilson. So we'd interview guys between at bats or before the home run derby, and we're just sweating. And I said something to Buck at one point. I was like, I got to change this shirt. Like, this thing is wet. He said, man, this is nothing. We're on a baseball field right now. This is nothing compared to what I used to deal with when I was a kid picking celery in Florida. And it is a man who at that point in time was, I don't know, 60 years older than I was. And I said, all right, maybe I really don't have a whole lot to complain about if this 94-year-old dude is sitting here telling me this is no problem. So had this wonderful, fun gig in Kansas City where my wife is from. Was offered an amazing opportunity to go back to Southern California and became the general manager of the Inland Empire 66ers, which is the Dodgers Advanced A affiliate in the California League. So went there, ran them for a couple of years, had a lot of fun. It was a different opportunity to do the gig where you're running the whole show than when you're a guy who kind of has to take orders with us. Somebody would walk in and say, I have an idea for promotion. And I would say, what do you got? And we would, if we wanted to do something, we'd roll it out that night. And so we got some good publicity with a lot of things, sold a lot of tickets in a really tough market. San Bernardino is it is the largest population without a network affiliate in the United States. So it was hard to make a dent there, but we did well. And my wife was pregnant with our younger one, who is now 14. And we said, well, what's the next chapter going to be in this before Loren either decides if he's going to quit baseball or if we're going to give this thing a go and have him be gone all summer, every summer. And so we came up here, and I had an opportunity with the Fisher Cats up in New Hampshire. I'm sure most of you have been to a game there. Was there as their vice president of marketing in 2009 and spent that season there and just said, okay, now it's time to raise a family. My older one, Maggie, at that point was 3.5, almost 4. My little one was just tiny. And so I wanted to make sure that I was around a bit more. And so the next thing, I mean, it's like the classic busman's holiday, right? I would, even now, if I'm not working a Sox game, I'm at a high school game. I am at a Legion ball game. I may have stopped at a Little League field. I may be throwing BP. Like, I love being around it. It's a lot of fun. So 2010, I didn't have a kid playing. I wasn't working in the game for the first time in a long time. So the one thing that I'd never done was umpire. And I said, well, I'd love to try this. And the guys in the Little League trained me how to do it. And they realized they had a victim who would do a bunch of games. So I did about 30 games that year. And loved it. And then, of course, the next year when my now 17-year-old Maggie was signed up to play baseball, my wife said, well, I'll check the box and you're going to coach. And so it was 2011 through 2018. I coached a team every year. And so I umpired, I coached. Has anybody used Game Changer, the app?
Yeah.
To score a game? All right. So game changing, and there's a point to that. I mean, that ties into why I'm actually here. And then as a board member selling sponsorships, which I did, God, from 2015 until last year, 2022, I was still stuck as the sign guy 4 years after I had a kid in the league, just because it was important. And now, so I guess any questions before I just keep rolling on with this? All right, beautiful. So 2019, a buddy of mine, so we were hosting a radio show in town. Bedford has a great public access station. We decided that we wanted to do a sports show. And so an hour a week, myself and my friend Andrew Hansen, who was a first baseman at Princeton. And oddly enough, I had broadcast games. I didn't know him then, broadcast games that he had played in the Northern League when he was a Sioux Falls Canary. But Hansen and I decided we would do the show. And we basically did it for about 3 years, right up until COVID hit, when I decided that our conversations were probably going to have to be more political if we were talking about sports at that point. I said, I don't want to be talking about politics. I want to talk about sports. And so we decided that that was kind of off the table. But Hansen in 2019 said, hey, the high school's looking for a freshman baseball coach. I think you'd be pretty good at that. And so all of a sudden, next thing I know, I was coaching high school baseball. The picture over there on the right is me on the left and Maggie on the right. So she is a senior now. That was in her sophomore season. I was coaching the JV team, the junior varsity team. And periodically she was on the varsity team. I would swing her down to play with me if there was no time conflict. And so somebody was kind enough to grab a shot of the two of us in the dugout. But Maggie is and Bruce is kind of right. He's not totally right. I wound up coaching freshmen for a couple of years, coached JV in 2022. And then this past year decided that I wanted to be the varsity assistant. My kid was on varsity. It was her second year there. And I said, I'm kind of missing too much. And the other thing was with the whole state house thing. I didn't want to ever be put in a situation where I would have to either say to my players, guys, I can't make the game because we have an important vote. But I also didn't want to be in a situation where I was saying to my constituents, yeah, I missed that really important vote because I went to go coach in a meaningless high school baseball game that meant something to me, meant something to the boys, but to the people that voted for me, it means nothing. So I decided, all right, I need to be somewhere where I can text somebody at 2 PM and say, I'm not going to be at practice today, or I'm not going to be at the game today. So I wound up as the varsity assistant last year, which it was the blast. Being able to be with, and I guess if you're kind of watching the trajectory of this, the group that I coached, so in Bedford, compared to other towns in the state and in the area, baseball is still really strong. We will typically get about 500 kids signed up for Little League every year. We didn't have that attrition that a lot of towns have seen. Like, it's been really consistent year over year, even with travel ball, even with lacrosse and other sports. Like, baseball has been really strong. So the players that I coached when they were freshmen in 2021, in a lot of cases, were the same kids that I had coached through T-ball, A-ball, AA, AAA, majors. And so a lot of these boys and Maggie, like, I've known since they were 3 feet tall. And so now I had them as freshmen. I moved up to JV with a lot of them. And now I'm on varsity with a lot of them. And they're at a point now where the bulk of them are seniors. And it's thrilling to watch these kids and say, all right, what are you going to do for college next year, dude? Or writing a letter of recommendation to a school so that one of my boys can go play college baseball. That's a big deal. And it's fun to look back and say, man, I didn't think you were going to get there, but somehow you got there, and realize that, you can make an impact, not by doing serious things, but you can make an impact on people through baseball. And that's a big deal. So, and the other piece of this whole thing is having a really hard time saying no to anything. So I said yes to coaching high school baseball in 2019, 2021. Dan Evans, who used to be the general manager of the Dodgers ages ago and was a scout. Dan was a scout who would come to a lot of Inland Empire games when I was there. And so we got to be friends because we'd have Fridays and Saturdays where the ballpark could be full, but you also have Mondays and Tuesdays where there's nobody there. And he'd say, hey, just come sit with me for a couple innings. And so we'd shoot the breeze and talk about player. Like you talk about a great job, like doing things like that. And so the Red Sox official scorer gig opened up, and he shot me a note and he said, I think you'd be really good at this. You're close to there, right? I said, I'm like an hour. He said, well, here's the link. Go fill this out. So filled out an application, and somebody looked at it and said, all right, this dude is breathing and has baseball experience. So, they sent me an email over and said, hey, here's this quiz. And I assume, since I'm talking to a room full of SABR people, everybody knows Rule 9 in the MLB rule book. I saw that Dan was on the SABR board of directors. I saw that on his Instagram, but brushed up on Rule 9, took the quiz that they sent over, did really well on the quiz. Had an interview with the guy who's now my boss, and he said, yeah, so here's the opportunity. And I said, dude, I got a lot of stuff coaching high school baseball, coaching Legion ball. I have a kid who plays ball in tournaments and you name it. And he said, yeah, these jobs don't really open up all that often. And I said, yeah, you're right. These jobs don't open up all that often. And so, in spite of all my better judgment, I said, I will do this. And we'll talk more about that later, obviously. And then the other thing that kind of dovetails into not being able to say no is, I don't know, it was like 15 months ago, somebody said to me, hey, would you ever consider running for the state house? And I said, no, not in your life. And they said, well, we'll put you on as a ballot filler. You don't necessarily have to run, but we think you could actually win. And I said, well, that makes one of us. I really don't think I have a shot. And I won by 47 votes. So I wound up spending a significant amount of time in 2023 up at the State House in Concord, and got to do some really important things. Things that as a parent are important to me, things that as somebody who cares about the environment and cares about leaving things better than I found them, were super important to me. So I don't know that I'll do it again, but it was a fun kind of chapter in this whole journey. So, questions before we move any further?
I actually, when I put this out for a last call, I got, and I have to call it up here, I'm doing that now, the CEO of SABR, Scott Bush, wanted me to ask you about the 2007 California League, Carolina League All-Star Game, and something about a hotel snafu.
Something about a what?
A hotel snafu?
I don't remember there being a snafu. I think, God, I have to ask him. I was there with Inland Empire.
Yeah.
But I don't, God, now I have to shoot Scott a note about that. I don't remember.
And he says that it has something to do with the fact that you failed to make hotel reservations on time and, excuse me, and wound up staying at the Red Roof in Stockton.
That may be. I'm trying to think, because I went in 2007.
Yeah.
Maybe. I would actually have to ask him.
He wanted me to remember. Wanted me to remember that story to you and send you his best wishes.
That's funny. That's really funny. I need to drop him a note too. I think I went in 2008. Well, I know I went in 2008 to Myrtle Beach, and I'm pretty sure I didn't make hotel arrangements there either. But I do vividly remember having to frantically get Carlos Santana out of his hotel room because we were going to miss the bus to go to the airport at 6 a.m. But God, now I have to ask Scott what I did. That's been a minute.
I got a couple of hands up. Let me go to Susan Nelson.
Go.
She wants to talk. Go.
Hi, Loren. I love your enthusiasm. Is there any player that you met and know a little bit that you really admire in your years in the minor leagues that you can say, aside from just being a baseball player, that's an admirable person?
It's funny. I've never thought about that. There are people that I really enjoy as people, which I guess is sort of what you're asking with it. And it's interesting now too. I meet a lot of people who have played at a high level, and like with anything, sometimes they say you don't want to meet your heroes. There have been some who are Hall of Fame players, and unfortunately you look at them and you say, you might be a Hall of Fame player, but man, you're not a terribly nice dude. Let me, it's funny. There are some who are just, I don't know. Charlie Huff is one that stands out that I just liked. I did this really kind of funny thing in 2008. One of my best friends was getting married, and he's a huge baseball fan. I was the best man in his wedding, and I did this project where everybody who was a baseball player or famous who came to the ballpark in Inland Empire, I would have them sign a baseball to my friend Brian and his then wife. And people kind of took it as a project. We had the late Rodney King do it. If anybody knows that name, he was a central figure in the LA riots that actually happened at the end of my freshman year of college. He was there. He was at the ballpark one day filming a video, and so I said, "Can I trouble you for this?" And he absolutely. And then I made the mistake of saying his big line during the riots was, "Can't we all get along?" And I said, "Can you sign it? Can't we all just get along?" And he gave me the side eye. But probably not appropriate. But I had a lot of people sign baseballs for Brian that year. So it was, and Molly, thank you for the chat. I totally appreciate you being here. And yes, absolutely. Thank you. And an early day for school is always rough. So there are some who stand out as human beings. Jim Gott, who was a Dodger pitcher, who was so the other part of this whole thing, my sister worked for the LA Dodgers from 1984 to 1992. So I got to interact with a lot of people. At that time too, she was their director of community services and special events. So she was in charge of the speakers bureau. Yeah, there were some sweet ones. Don Newcomb, utterly amazing. Tommy Lasorda, rough exterior, but literally would sign every autograph for every person who was there in line if they were standing there waiting for him. Jim Gott, who was a relief pitcher for the Dodgers and the Pirates, and I think the Blue Jays maybe. Jim Gott, instead of the line moving to Jim Gott would move with the line. Sweet Lou Johnson, who played for the Dodgers, played in Sandy Koufax's perfect game. Sweet Lou Johnson is one of my all-time favorite people. Just he was like my pal when I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I'd go up to the ballpark and he just had me go do stuff with him. He had a job that he was doing, but he always let me tag along with him. Others, Tommy Davis was great. Maury Wills. They're just Buddy Biancalana is another fun one that we had in Kansas City. There are just some people who realize that they were lucky and are very gracious. And then there's some people who, if you ever watched Tin Cup, there's he hates three things: children, old people, and dogs. What's David Sims, the golfer who's going against Tin Cup? There are some guys who it's like that. They know how to put the face on outside, and then the second they walk inside, kids are I can't believe these kids. I did have a bizarre experience. It was really it was just one of these, like, you can't believe it. I was walking around with the Dodgers director of communications at the winter meetings. I think it was 2004. And we were just walking and talking, and he was introducing me to people, and I was trying to, just, I guess, expand my Rolodex at that point. Because at that point I wanted to be a big league broadcaster, and I guess I still do. And so he says, "All right, we got to go check in this one conference room." And he throws the door open, and who's standing in there but Cal Ripken, who's wearing nothing except his underwear, changing into something. But like a ball player who spent his life in locker rooms talking to people while he's half dressed, whether he wants to or not, he didn't bat an eye. He just had the conversation, talked to Gary, took care of business. That was that. So there are some people who really pleasantly surprise you, and then there's some people who disappoint you. So, but thank you. That was, yeah. I kind of talked my way into some answers, I guess.
Thank you.
Donna Muscarella. How you doing, Donna?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am great. We're going to go to you, and then we're going to let Loren get back to his presentation. Go.
Okay. I was going to ask something about Maggie, but I have a feeling that they may steal some thunder from your presentation. So I wanted to ask, were you able to be at Cooperstown for Buck's induction into the Hall of Fame?
Unfortunately, I was not. This summer, I spent pretty much every waking moment at a ballpark somewhere. but not there, unfortunately. And it has been really fun to watch Bob Kendrick as he's become the face of all of this, because when we moved to Kansas City in 2003, I really wanted to, like, on my list of things was I want to meet Buck O'Neill. And we went to his 80th birthday party. Is that right? It was 03. No, it was his 90th birthday party. We went to his 90th birthday party down at the Jazz Museum at 18th and Vine, and got to meet him and got to spend some time with him over the years. But Bob has always just been such a good advocate for the Negro Leagues and making sure that everything is remembered. And he's just a wonderful, sweet human. And it's fun. Even now, like, I ran into him in the cafeteria at Fenway. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but just seeing him, catching up, and seeing what all this has become. And we went to, I think it might have been 21 or 22 at Thanksgiving. We were in Kansas City, and I shot him a note and said, "Hey, want to go to the museum and and bring Maggie by?" And he's, "Absolutely, let me know when you're here. I want to show her the whole Peanut Johnson, Tony Stone thing." That's one of their busiest days of the year, and he walked around with us for an hour and a half, and he was like the Pied Piper. He had this group of people, and so he knows that it's this oral history that's getting passed on, and he's doing it like it's as Buck would have appreciated it. So I would have loved to have gotten out there. Unfortunately, just couldn't. I don't know I don't know which tournament or college showcase I was at, but this summer I was somewhere, so it didn't stop.
I was there, and the Pied Piper took place in Cooperstown as well. I ran into Bob a couple of times, and every time we were standing chatting, a line started and people would be following him. And so I totally know what you're talking about.
It's amazing. Like, you talk to that guy and you watch how people interact with him, and you say, all right, there's got to be a way that we can all figure this out so that we can find common ground on everything, because he's telling the story of something that was a very difficult time in America in such a way that you don't feel bad that about what's going on. You're feeling empowered by the whole story, and it's I don't know, I hope he's writing a book. I don't know if you ever read the Joe Posnanski book about Buck. I'm blanking on the title of it. I saw you nod, but like, that's one of those, I use it all the time. The story about the foul ball in the stands, and Posnanski is just guy fighting with a kid for a ball and keeping the ball, and Posnanski says, "Can you believe that guy?" And the guy says, and Buck says, "Well, maybe he has a kid at home." And Posnanski says, "Well, if he has a kid at home, why didn't you bring him to the ball game?" And Buck says, "Maybe his kid is sick." And Posnanski realizes that there's nothing that he's ever going to do that's going to beat Buck O'Neill at that game, or make him see the world like Buck saw it. Mm-hmm. And you look at Bob, and Bob is creating that for everybody else. So yeah, I'm glad you were able to be there. So yeah, that's we were so bummed out when he didn't get in 2006. Like, it was, I mean, man was still with us, but you would have thought that somebody died in the ballpark. Like, and the really cool thing now is the team that I worked for has developed a partnership with the T-Bone, or the team that I work for has developed a partnership with the Negro Leagues Museum, where they're now the Kansas City Monarchs, which is like, that's like next level. Like, we used to talk about it, almost 20 years ago, that should have been the name of the team then. Like, but now it is, and that's also helping keep it alive. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So women's baseball, and I don't want to go, I want to keep it to an hour. So I'm going to either talk shorter or faster. So what's that, Bruce?
You keep going, man. We'll take it.
All right, cool. Baseball for All is the largest girls baseball organization, if anybody's heard of it. They have been around, I'm going to say, probably about 10 years now. They put on a national tournament every year. I think this year they had about 600 girls. It's amazing. And if you've never seen girls play baseball at a higher level, it's eye-opening. You get used to the boys play baseball, girls play softball thing. That's not how it is. That's one thing that I would absolutely, if you have an opportunity to watch some good girls baseball, do it. Justine Siegel, who is like a laundry list of firsts. She was the first to coach in the major league. She was the first to coach for it in baseball at any level as a woman. She was the first to throw BP, but Justine founded BFA, an amazing speaker and somebody who is doing her part to really make the funnel as wide as it can so that more and more girls are playing. And I can tell you, having seen it and been around it for a while, it is getting better year after year. And all these girls are being empowered by the fact that, there might not be a girls baseball team where they live, but they're playing with the boys. They're having to keep up with the boys. And I can say it having seen it, it's amazing. So the next one is American Girls Baseball, which for those of you who know any of the old AAG BPL ladies or PBL ladies, Sue Zippe, Lois Youngin, Maybelle Blair, there's still a few of them who are Janine Lesko. There's still a few of them who are around, and they're also fun. They bring baseball to life. They will come to the Baseball for All events. They'll come to the AGB events. But at the AGB event, which is down in Sarasota, if anybody, to use the New England verb, winters in Sarasota or Florida, I'd strongly recommend checking that out. The rosters for that tournament feature more than half of the women's national team, a significant number of women who were top 40 for the women's national team and didn't make that top 20 cut. Women who are college baseball players, college softball players, girls who throw 80 miles an hour, Olivia Pichardo, who plays at Brown. So you're going to see some really good, high quality baseball there. They also need sponsors. So if you Google American Girls Baseball, you'll find it. Sue Zippe, who is an amazing story. She was a golf pro. She was a tennis pro. She's and obviously played in the women's professional league as well. But Sue has basically largely self-funded this thing. So it's amazing. The picture that's down in the bottom right here is actually Maggie pitching. I think that one was on, I think it was on either Yahoo or sportsillustrated.com. Just always kind of cool when you get on a website and wait, that's my kid. And the top one is they got to play. So the USA team played some exhibition games, and they put together kind of a Washington Generals type team to play against them. My daughter Maggie did not make the top 20. She was right on the cusp of it, and so she played for the Kenosha Comets. And so she has now been a Kenosha Comet as well as the South Bend Blue Sox. But utterly, it's amazing. It's fun to watch your kid get out and wear one of those jerseys, and the women were cheering for them. They were not cheering for Team USA. They were cheering for the team that was representing them out there that day. So probably had 1,000 people in the stands watching a really good high-level women's baseball game. So, and as far as USA baseball game, the women's national team is qualified for the 2024 World Cup as well. And again, there are some Northeast ties there. My daughter's good friend, Beth Greenwood, who's from Amherst, New Hampshire. Beth made the team this year. We had Elise Berger, who's from Vermont, Shelburne right outside of Burlington. Elise has turned into one of the better pitchers, and she's just 18 years old. Somebody that, we've known Elise since she was 12 or 13. So just fun to watch these girls go out and compete against the best in the world, and just play the game that we love. So it's been utterly amazing. So some important info before we talk about the official scoring stuff. And Donna, if you have another question about the women's baseball, I can do that right now while it's Right.
I have one if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Are you familiar with a player named Kelsey Whitmore? She plays for
Of
the
course.
Atlantic League. I wonder
Yeah,
if you can say a few words for her. I saw her play and she was quite impressive.
She's great. Kelsey played softball. She played baseball at Temecula Valley High School. Softball at Cal State Fullerton, was the Big West Player of the Year. But even outside of any of that, for these girls, even for my daughter who's 17, to have somebody to look up to who's 23, or I think Kelsey's 24. And so somebody like Kelsey who goes to the girls now coming up through this pipeline are super lucky. They get to Major League Baseball puts on events, USA Baseball puts on events, and they get invited to these events, and they get to go down to Vero Beach to the Jackie Robinson Training Center and play baseball with their friends for a few days and get instruction from guys like Cliff Floyd or LaTroy Hawkins or Luke Collier, or women like Kelsey or Veronica Alvarez, who's the coach of the women's team. Kelsey is a super empowering speaker with these girls. And, to me, when you're somebody like that and you realize the role that you play and you are not just focused on the 200 feet in front of you, but you're also looking behind you and reaching out a hand to the girls. Think back to a tough time. Like my Maggie didn't make USA team and we were bummed out about it. Like she had a good tryout, didn't make it. Kelsey shot her a note. Didn't have to do that, but that's the type of person she is. So, she is a world-class player and a world-class person. And, the girls that are the high school age girls are really lucky to have people that they can, reach out to who can inspire them. And so, yeah, thank you for asking that. It's, and I'm glad you got to see her play. She's an absolute star. And even the girl, she inspires the women who are older than she is, who are still out there pushing, because literally nobody works harder than Kelsey Whitmore does. Nobody does. Words of inspiration that I share with my players. So it was the COVID summer. Beth was playing baseball at the University of Rochester. Their season didn't happen. Maggie's 8th grade season didn't happen. And there wasn't a whole lot of baseball from like March until June. And so every day we went to the field and did something, or we're lucky, we have a barn in town that the girls can use, or that my players can use, that a friend of mine has, that's all set up to go hit. So the kids will get in there and it's like Bill Gates having access to a computer lab for these kids to be able to just go and hit for half an hour, hit off a machine, do whatever they work on catching, you name it. But that summer I spent a lot of time on sports psychology because I was trying to put myself into the shoes of Maggie and Beth. Beth that summer was playing in the Sunset League, which is renowned up here as the oldest after supper baseball league in existence. I didn't know supper was a thing necessarily until I moved up here. But that is, what they call themselves. Beth was the first girl to play in that league. And it's like college players and people who are slightly a little bit out of college. And Maggie was playing against the boys on the big field. And so I said, all right, I need to try to get under the hood and figure out what can we use tricks? Can we use sports psychology tricks? And so I got really into Ken Ravizza. If anybody knows about him, he was with the Cal State Fullerton, he was with the Angels, the Cubs. Brian Kane, Zach Sorensen, Justin Sua, a lot of the Daily Stoic stuff. But those are in the words of wisdom and words of inspiration, I guess, vary player to player, because some people might not need it at that time, but they might need it later. Some guys might have all the confidence in the world, but something, they might need that kind of the Michael Jordan or the Kobe Bryant edge. I need to be mad at somebody. And so it's almost, if I was a doctor and a patient walked in, I might prescribe something different for one than different for another. The the biggest ones that I can say that I use are one pitch at a time, one play at a time. You know, a lot of staying within yourself, remembering to breathe. A lot of it is how do you prepare when you're outside of an at bat or outside of a game. And you know, and what I'm trying to do with my high school kids is have them realize that these aren't the only stressful situations. They're going to be tests, they're going to be job interviews, and how can I use the tactics that we've worked on so that I succeed when I'm at a job interview or I'm in a test and I don't know everything that's going on. What's in front of me may as well be Greek to me. How do I take a breath, reset, move on to the next thing, and maybe come back to the next one later? So, you know, that's a big thing that I push to my players, and thank you for that. That's why I love coaching. It's different things make different kids tick. You know, at the end of it all, I get to make impact with everybody. Gary, I will get to that one when I talk about the scoring stuff, but I will not forget, I promise. So some important info. I see Bruce's Immaculate Grids on Twitter. I am not the 9 out of 9 guy, although today I got absolutely screwed because I was, I'm not going to ruin it in case anybody hasn't done it, but I was putting a name in there and it thought that I was typing in Lance Berkman, which Lance Berkman never stole 30 bases in a season. I should have had 9 and 9 and I didn't. Not a Red Sox fan. People always want it, but is it hard being a Red Sox fan and being a scorer? No, I don't care. I love baseball. I'm not a Red Sox fan. I'm not as great with stats and players as you guys are. I grew up in a game. I mentioned that one. I was lucky. I was able to see Kirk Gibson's homer in the '88 World Series. I saw Bo Jackson lead off the 1989 All-Star game with a homer in Anaheim. I was at his last football game when he got tackled by Kevin Walker of the Bengals at the LA Coliseum. And I think I probably saw the first waves in the USA during the 1984 Olympics at Dodger Stadium for baseball. That was South Korea was playing, and we were like, what's this thing? And nobody knew what it was. Yes, I love Susan's next question too. So we'll get there. All right. There's the next slide. All right, there we go.
There it is.
Cool. All right. So how did you get the job? Actually, the picture on the right is like one of my absolute favorite things. I love the ballpark when nobody is there. Like that's my favorite thing. I had to take my daughter to the train station. She was going down to New York City for a college visit. I wound up at the ballpark at like 4 o'clock one day. I took my laptop. I was sitting out on the suite level doing work in the sun. Batting practice is going on. It's the crack of the bat. I could smell food, music. I'm like, this does not suck. Like who else gets to do this? So the ballpark when it's empty. That night with the picture was quite probably a night that maybe the Red Sox came back late or somebody scored a bunch of runs late, because that's the only time I'm there that late. And we'll get to that in a second. I got the job. We talked about that. I took a test, had an interview. Literally, has anybody seen the movie Hoosiers? So Gene Hackman, Coach Norman Dale has this scene when he's standing outside the doors of the gym and he takes a deep breath and he says, "Welcome to Indiana basketball." And he opens the door and the gym is just going nuts. That's my experience every time I turn the corner to go down into the press box. I have this like, and Bill may know this, may not know this. I turn the corner and I go, I am not supposed to be here. Why am I the guy who's doing this job? And I have to act like I can do that job until the job is done for the day. Rule 9 of Major League Baseball was what I needed to know. And there are still times, and so I'll show you guys some of the stuff that I use that may help out. I still need to consult the rule book most days just to be safe anyway. What's the job? Quick decisions. Try to do it by the next batter wherever possible. Reasons are nobody likes to get on MLB.com and see official scoring pending. My players, when that happens and they should be in school, paying attention to school, will text me and say, "Coach, why does it say official scoring decision pending?" So it's that. It's hit and error, pass ball, wild pitch, earned versus unearned, stolen base versus defensive indifference, balancing the box score. And we'll talk about some of that quickly. And then I have some really cool resources that I use as well, and I'll show you some of those too. To answer Gary's question, so before I got on, and so keep in mind, I started doing this in 2021 when COVID was still a really real thing, and we were still trying to figure out vaccines and all that sort of stuff, and what exactly are we going to do? I mean, the first probably third of the season, or maybe close to a third of the season, I was doing games where the crowds were smaller than the minor league crowds in a lot of places that I worked. You'd have 4,000 people at the ballpark. You could hear the one leather-lunged fan yelling. It was wild. And but what they did with us, ordinarily they will take people to a central location and have a meeting and talk through everything. What they did with us was a series of seminars with some of the guys who'd been around for a long time. And we would watch a play and they'd say, okay, what do you think it is? And then the old dogs would sit there and say, I think it's a hit. I think it's an error based on this and that. Well, have you considered this? Have you considered the exit velocity? Look at the hop. Look at where the sun is. Oh yeah, Fenway during the day, the sun does this. Is a guy wearing sunglasses or not? Does he give the universal sign for I can't see it, which is his palms are up and you can see the fear in his eyes. So a lot of that picked up as I went through those sessions with everybody, but a lot of that you're kind of doing as you go too. So some of the other things that I typically didn't do, and this gets back to Game Changer. I spent a really long time doing Game Changer, and people take their 12-year-old and 13-year-old kids' stats really seriously. And people also like to really artificially inflate their kids' stats, but regardless. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting stuff right and that I knew what ordinary effort looked like for a 12 or 13-year-old or a 14 or 15-year-old. And I knew it. I had done some games when I worked in Kansas City. Our official scorer there was a gentleman by the name of Lou Spry, who had done the official scoring at the College World Series for a million years. Lou would do seminars for fans and always took the time to educate us on rules and always took the time to walk us through his rationale for things. And that has made a big difference. And if I could say somebody who's probably influenced me the most, even though he's no longer with us, it's Lou. His wife, Marilyn, every year used to make a lasagna dinner and wine. And she'd feed the entire press box one game, lasagna and wine. We shouldn't have been having that before the game, but and any question I had, he would always answer. So that was instrumental in my training. So, but tracking a game on Game Changer, I'm not looking at putouts, assists, errors, double plays necessarily. I'm not tallying up stolen bases versus caught stealings or pass balls and wild pitches or who allowed a home run or what. So that's one thing, and we'll get into that quickly in a second too. To go back to the question that came from Susan about appeals. Yes, absolutely. They, over the years, have done a really good job of making the official scorers much more anonymous. So people don't generally know who's scoring a game on any given day. I used to, when I was in Kansas City, we had a phone in the clubhouse, and we had, not a phone in the clubhouse, a phone in the dugout, and a phone. My press box where I broadcast the games was also my office, oddly enough. And so right next to the phone in the dugout was a phone list. And guys would see my name on the phone list. It was one guy in particular, actually, would see my name on the phone list. And he'd get back in after, an inning had ended. And I said that somebody said that something was an error. And before he went out to play, I'd get a phone call from the dugout. I'd say, "What's up?" He'd say, "Hey, I can't believe you made that call." And I'd say, "Shut your mouth and go play your position." And just because those guys I rode the buses with, we were buddies with. That's independent ball. That was another gig entirely. Major League Baseball, they do a really good job of keeping us away from everything else. If a guy wants to file an appeal, he's got to formally file an appeal. It gets adjudicated by they would have called it a triumvirate, but it's more than three. It gets adjudicated by them, and then it winds up, is it a hit or is it an error? So that is one piece of it. I don't generally get blowback. Where I get blowback, oddly enough, is Twitter, where people might not know who I am, but like I'll make a call on something that's 50-50, and I'll type in Red Sox or I'll type in official score into the search on Twitter, just because I'm a glutton for punishment and I kind of want to see what people are saying. So because I don't care. But yeah, that's one piece of it. The other things about scoring are anticipating and preparing. Just making that mental check of where are guys. It was harder last year when the shift was fair game. Like, believe it or not, Xander Bogaerts wearing high socks made my life so easy because I could pick him out. Whereas if I had four guys in the Red Sox infield who were all wearing, or if the shortstop and second baseman were both wearing low socks, or if Kike wasn't wearing bright green shoes, forget it. I had no shot. So it's anticipating where the play is going to be, kind of the same as if you're playing. So, all right, there's a guy on second base. Where's the outfield playing? What's the speed of the runner? What's the speed of the runner on second base while this is happening? And then preparation, just knowing who's going to be on each team. Is this going to be a team that gambles? Is it the Angels from a few years ago where you have dudes who go first to third on everything? And honestly, that's one of my favorite things about baseball this year is guys are taking extra bases. Like what would have been a single a couple of years ago, guys are trying to stretch into a double, whether they get there or not, they're still trying to. So, but just knowing, trying to get an idea of tendencies. So that helps a lot with scoring and knowing, is that the continuation of a play? Did, the player was going from, he wound up on second base, but was he watching the right fielder? And the second the ball rolled up the right fielder's arm, all of a sudden he kicks it into high gear. Well, that's probably not going to be a double. It might be a single E9 based upon that. So that's one piece. So to answer Roger's question about a pitcher who got a win in the same game, it's a blown save. If more often than not, well, if a guy comes in and basically does the Phil Regan thing, if he vultures a win, that can happen. So it is still possible to vulture a win where your team might be up 3-2, you give up a run, but you didn't pitch ineffectively. You just may have given up a run, and so you technically blew the save. And then they scored one in the bottom of the ninth, and you vulture the win. There's nothing that prohibits a guy from doing that. The thing that is funny now where you have guys who are opening games is you get the whole brief and effective thing, where that becomes the scorer's judgment as to who gets a win. And those are always strange. The 3-inning save ones are kind of strange where you go, well, that game was 9-2. Nobody should get the save. And then you look down and say, the same guy through the last 4 innings of the game, he gets the save in that one. So just, there are always oddities that pop up, but the reason that would probably happen is it may have been a 1-run game or, and a guy gives up the lead, doesn't get the save, but winds up getting the win by virtue of the fact that he was a pitcher of record when the team scored the go-ahead run. Thank you, Joe. To answer Sean's question, Red Fox, no. Jamie Foxx, no. Jimmy Foxx, no. I do have the same birthday as Jimmy Foxx, but he was born, 66 years before I was. So, but no relation, oddly enough. So, all right. So everybody's got their own methods for doing stuff. You'll notice on this one, if you zoom in, it says up top versus Cincinnati Reds. One of the scorers from the Reds was kind enough to give me a sheet that I could use. But the thing that I've highlighted in the middle that's green was an 8-3-5 triple play. That was in a Braves Sox game this year. That was the first time that's happened since 1884. So it's basically the first time that's happened in baseball history. So you really never know what you're going to see with anything like that. When the game ends, and Bill has probably seen this from his perch up top, go through and just make sure that, at bats, runs, hits, total bases, everything jives. But the other thing that I have to do is look at putouts, assists, errors, and double plays. The way that I track this, and I never had to track this before this, I use one of those Bic 4-color pens, and I make dots. So if you were looking closely at the one on the right, there are dots that are black, red, green, and blue. Red is a putout, green is an assist, black is an error, blue is a double play. And so what I'll do is I'll just go through and count the colored dots, and basically everything tends to line up pretty well as long as you don't sleep on a play. And I'll go through a couple times a game and just true it up and make sure that nothing's weird. When you have a game like I worked Saturday's game, which was a 1-0 game, the Red Sox lost it. It took me about 2 minutes to make sure that everything was balanced after the game. It was super quick. Let's see. Didn't have another slide. I want to show one more thing. So can you guys see what I'm sharing? Like the baseball field? All right, cool. All right. So as luck would have it, there are no games going on right now, but I wanted to show some things that we have access to that are kind of fun. So this one, hang on. I don't want the simulator to go. I want this to go. All right. So you may remember this play. This was a couple years ago. Javi Baez grounds to third, throw over to first against the Pirates. Baez stops and starts running backwards. And meanwhile, the runner from third comes home. Then Baez decides he's going to first. Well, there's nobody there. So they throw it into right field. And he winds up taking second base on the play. So pretty wild play. Anytime really anything happens, we can look and say, all right, well, I want to see, might have been the pitch before. So this is 2021, swing and a miss, right? And I can look for anything like that and say, swinging strike, the pitch was, you can get this stuff pretty readily now, but I still feel like, Tom Hanks's character in the movie Big, when he gets to play with all the toys. So swinging strike, speed, time it took to get to the plate, spin of the pitch, extension, so how far a pitcher is when the ball gets released. They do have some fun things for us where it will tell you the probability that something is a pass ball or a wild pitch. Pretty sweet. This is a fun one, though, and the reason I brought up this play was because of this. So you have a simulator on this one. This is the Baez play where he runs around. Back when he was El Mago, before he was a guy who got traded all over the place. And Jeff, I still do have a Javi Baez Mets shirt. Why is this stuck? So there you go. He hits the ball to third. Third baseman throws over to first. Baez stops, starts running backward. Somebody decides they're going to send the runner from third home. They do. Then Baez starts running again. So and there goes the ball into right field. So what this gives me the ability to do is look and see what the computer's seeing as far as the relative spatial relationships of the players. Kind of fun. Just neat to be able to look at that and do that. And then I have access to some other, if I need video, I can look at, for example, high home. So maybe something happens and I wanted to see how far a guy had to travel for a ball, or maybe, I wanted to know what something looks like from the third base photographer's well. So I have access to a number of sort of different looks that, it makes it easier for me in that 20 seconds to, seriously, where can we get some toys like this? Game Day does do some similar stuff now, but for me, being able to do that, like, keep in mind, I generally have 20 seconds until the next batter, and I don't want to lag too long on it. So Bill knows where I sit. I have a desk in front of me, like the front counter, but I have a TV to my left that has Nesson on. Nesson usually runs at like a 6-second delay. So if something happens, immediately I turn to my left, I watch it again. If I didn't get it from that, I can go, I have what we just looked at called up and ready to go. And I can just click on that play, watch it real quick, I let my stringer know, the guy who puts it on MLB.com, let him know, make an announcement to the press box. And that's kind of the whole process that goes along with that. And like, I don't know, Bill, the game the other night, there were exactly 0 where I really had to think about it. Everything was about as cut and dry as could be, and it was like a 2-hour, 27-minute game. Sometimes you get those, and then sometimes you get the ones where there was a couple years ago, the last game that, or it was maybe Labor Day, we had plans. It was a day game. We were going to somebody's house for a barbecue afterward, and the game was 4.5 hours. And I think there were about 4 things that were like unprecedented, just weird, inside the park home runs versus errors versus who knows what. So, but yeah, that's sort of it in a nutshell. So I know that there were questions. If anybody has any others, I'm more than happy to answer whatever.
I want to open it up for just a second to Dr. Stephen Weisensale, who is here tonight. Dr. Weisensale is the Professor Emeritus of Public Policy, Human Development, and Family Sciences at the University of Connecticut. Dr. Weisensale, you had a couple of questions you emailed me earlier I would like for you to put out to Loren. Go ahead. You are muted. You are not, we can't hear you. Okay, so unfortunately your mic's not working, Doctor. So I have your questions right here. Let me ask them for you. I apologize. It's too bad. It was nice to see you tonight, though. Thanks a lot for coming in. Go Orioles.
Yeah, it's a good year to be an Orioles fan. For real.
So, and of course, my computer printed this out in such a way that my arms aren't quite long enough, but we're going to give this a shot. Question 1 was, legally, can a community deny a young girl from playing Little League Baseball with boys if the option of playing softball exists in that particular community? Do you happen to know the answer to that question, Loren?
That's a good question. To the best of my knowledge, no. They cannot deny a girl that right. Justine Siegel has been fighting for that for a long time with Baseball for All. And typically at the younger ages, it's not a problem. There have been occasions where people will do what they can to force girls out, making things difficult, in one way or another. I'm in a room full of wood. We haven't encountered those here. People have always been extremely welcoming, and kind and encouraging. But I do know of people in other parts of the country where by the time they get into high school, that argument is made. But that's a lot like saying that tennis and squash are the same sport. Softball is different than baseball. 60-foot bases, 85 feet thrown home to second. Pitcher's mound's 45 feet. Arm angle obviously is different. The ball weighs 7 ounces and not 5. There are a lot of differences between the two sports. So they have, and so there's a lady who lives down in Hoboken, New Jersey. Yeah, I was just going to say, named Maria Pepe, who Maria was prohibited from playing on her Little League team. And this was in the early 70s. The National Organization of Women got involved in everything. And Maria went up through the courts, and it made it so that women could play. It didn't help Maria out. But Baseball for All, the organization that I was talking about earlier, BFA, every year does a Maria Pepe tournament now in Hoboken in honor of Maria. And Maria comes to the tournament and speaks. And she is genuinely moved, as you would expect, by the fact that she's looking out and there are a couple hundred girls playing baseball, and that wasn't what she was able to do. And I think it was the first year they had the tournament. Her old Little League coach came to the tournament. He's still around, and he came to the tournament and introduced her and walked around with her. And it was just, you can just see that it's a big part in people's lives. And so, yeah, to the best of my knowledge, at Little League, girls can play. High schools, it varies. And a lot of places, they will push, against that. Or they will, do things like, yeah, we had tryouts and, yeah, sorry, we weren't able to keep you, whether somebody was able to make it. You know, it's a challenging piece. And, you know, some parts of the country, girls experience that. We have not experienced it here. There are other girls that are playing high school at different levels. There's a girl who played at my alma mater, Corona Del Mar in California, which is a really good high level program. The coach at the time, she didn't play much because it's a great baseball team. You know, and I mean, it's Southern California high school baseball. Like it's really good, but he had her on the team, and she had opportunity to play where it made sense for her to play. You know, what I will say to kind of quickly, I guess, as long as we're on the topic, like last year, Maggie had the opportunity to catch a boy who's now signed a letter of intent to go play at Vanderbilt. You know, throwing in the low 90s. Like talk about you know, I remember catching a friend of mine throwing low 90s in high school, you know, and not doing the best job of it. And here she's catching a lefty with the ball darting in and out. And, you know, I guess what I've seen a lot of is if you give girls the opportunity to do it, more often than not, they're going to rise to the occasion. They're going to figure out a way that they can train harder. They're going to figure out a way that they can do the little things that others might not be doing. If they love the game enough, they'll find a way to keep going and keep playing it. But I will also say there's nothing, you know, softball is a different game, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, you know, the only mark against softball is it's not baseball.
Along those lines, Dr. Weisenfeld wanted to ask, to what extent has club baseball for women at the college level caught on? Can you provide examples of where it's played at the college and university level? Absolutely.
So Occidental has a team out in California. The University of Washington has a team. I think Fullerton had one. I know Montclair State down in New Jersey had one. There have been so Justine with Baseball for All did a women's club baseball tournament. It took place last fall and the fall before. I'm not sure whether it's on tap for this fall. I would assume that it is, but and as part of the Baseball for All Nationals, they do have, assuming that there's no conflict with any other events, they do have a college tournament as well. So where you get college age women playing, although it's not club team, but I do think there's ample opportunity for women's club baseball to continue to grow. They're trying to grow it to a point that it could become a D1 sport. And it's interesting when you hear about other things that are on the verge of becoming a D1 sport. I didn't realize this. Women's flag football is on the cusp of becoming a Division I sport. I guess there are a good number of teams. So it'll take work, but you know, and truly the hardest thing with it is getting critical mass at a school where you know that, can I have enough players and enough pitchers to fill out a roster to play and to go somewhere and play and to really scratch the itch. And I know that women have also played club on their college teams. I know that Beth's first year at Rochester, she played on the club team. Katie Reynolds down at UNC Charlotte played club baseball as well. So, you know, and then there are women who are playing D1, D2, D3. Marie Kalisic is playing out at Sonoma State, which is D2. Olivia Pichardo played at Brown this past year. Brown's D1. And then you have a number of others who have played D3 and JUCO. So it is growing. It's just a matter of it's Justine and her group have done it right, where it's like you need to grow it as far as and wide as you can, so that eventually the numbers hit a critical mass that, yes, it becomes a viable thing.
That's great stuff. Anybody else have something? Stephen gave you the thumbs up, so there you go.
I got it. I saw it.
Anybody else for Loren? Any other questions, comments? Jeff?
Yeah, I have one. Loren, I was in the press box at Citi Field a couple of weeks ago, and the official score has their own, like you said, on TV there. But
yeah,
do you get any help from the press that are gathered watching the game saying, oh, what do you think about that? And could you change it? Whatever. Do you have anybody give you pressure, I should say?
No, not really. Except Bill.
Oh,
Joking. No, I'm totally kidding. No. And that it makes sense. Like, I guess, and the one thing that I don't know, I've really tried to do is, like, I'm paying attention to everything. I'm paying attention to the weather. I'm paying attention to the exit velocity, how the ball is hit. Is there funny spin? If it's a pitcher, is it a comeback, or what I consider how routine is the play? What's ordinary effort for a league average player? I'm considering all that stuff. I may change it later, and people will hear me say, that's a base hit, but I hate that call. And so I might go back and look at it a few more times and try to figure it out. There have been ones where I've looked at it and, I'm trying to figure out, like a day game at Fenway. All right, I'm seeing sun off the guy's sunglasses while he's going back for a fly ball. Well, having played a lot of outfield, I know that if you're staring straight into the sun and you lose the ball, it's awfully hard to pick it back up again. And so it's trying to put myself into the shoes of the player that's making the play, and understand, all right, was that a play? What's his body language like after the play? Is that something he thinks he should have had? The wild pitch pass ball ones are funky. My daughter's a catcher. And so it's like, I've watched so much high school baseball where you go, man, he totally bricked that one, or she totally bricked that one. I gotta give him a fastball on that one. And so you just kind of get a bit of an understanding of what it should be. And, if anybody's going to convince me another way, it's probably going to be me. And I'm not saying that I know better than anybody, because, I don't know that I do. It's just more, I have to convince myself that I'm doing the job for a reason. And, that I need to, using all the information that I have, make the best possible decision that I can make, because, and I'm not saying anything about anybody in particular. There are a lot of times, whether it's parents running Game Changer, where they think they know what a rule is or how something should be interpreted, and they just don't. They think that because something got by the catcher, it's a pass ball, or they think that in a first and third situation, with the, maybe the winning run on first base, and it's first and third, but they don't have the catcher throw down to second base because they don't want the tying run to come across on a double steal, that's defensive indifference. And it's not. And so it's thinking through it and kind of hoping that my sort of unhealthy addiction to baseball has at least paid off in maybe a couple regards of my life, and that's about it.
I just have one follow-up, if you don't mind. Early in your presentation, you referred to a Rule 9.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's pretty complicated, but could you give us a layman what that means?
Oh yeah. So if you actually, I'll just do this real quick. Hang on. I'm just gonna pull this up. So, and then I will share my screen, I promise. So, all right. Where is that? Sweet. All right. So, Rule 9 is everything that governs the official score. So, it's the kind of when somebody should make a scoring decision, the post-game report, what constitutes player batting out of turn, hits, errors, stolen bases, wild pitches, pass balls, you name it. So, if you will find the Major League Rule Book as a PDF. So if you were to do that and look at Rule 9, that'll give you everything as far as, and it's got the whole transference of all right, a pitcher leaves the game and, the first batter who comes up hits into a force play, whose runner is the runner on first, and thinking through situations like that, or, a team run versus, it may be a team unearned run, but it's an earned run for that pitcher, and those sorts of situations as well. So, before I get to Donna, I think Bill was raising his hand, so
He did,
I,
yes.
I was just going to follow up on one thing that you said, responding to the question of whether you sometimes consult with media folks. You are part of a group of 4 people that work for Major League Baseball, and you do occasionally ask 1 or 2 of them a question, right?
usually I've made up. Usually it's more of a, I'm trying to convince myself otherwise.
There are differences among you scorers. There is one of the other scorers that often talks to the other people.
Yes, maybe. It's funny because I've only been in the press box once when I haven't been scoring. Right. I generally like to operate from a place of, this is mine to figure out. And I'm innately curious, and so I'm trying, and you probably heard us. We'll play this game where we guess the exit velo. Like, oh yeah, that was 104. I'm like, no, that was like 108. Boom, 108. And so, not that I'm radar eyes or anything like that, but you're looking at things, and I guess my process is, I watch the play, I make a decision based upon what my eyes told me right off the bat. Then, if it's something that's absolutely 100% no doubter, all right, I'll go that direction. If I'm even maybe 20% not sure, I'll start going through all right, I'm going to watch Nesson. So it's like, stuff happens pretty quick. We're like, all right, went off the guy's glove. My first reaction is error. I'm going to watch the replay on Nesson. And then I'm going to look over at whoever's stringing the game. I'm going to give them thumbs up, thumbs down. And then I'll announce it to everybody else. So it's, but I want to be quick and not belabor it. And obviously this year there's a little bit more time that it's taking, or I have less time to make that decision because of the pitch clock, which I don't know where everybody else stands on the pitch clock. I love it. I will say it is absolutely, it's thrilling, and the night people stick around till the end of the game. And that didn't always happen on school nights, or even, you're thinking about, I'm not going to get the kids in bed until 11. Well, if the game's done at 10 o'clock, you got a shot at getting home, stay until the end of the game. So anyway, I digress. So Donna, what's your question?
Donna's the last one for the night.
It's a little bit of a follow-up on what you were talking about Kelsey. Not so much of a question, but just wanted to share with everybody, touching on what you said about her tenacity and her ability to inspire people. She actually visited the Baseball Hall of Fame earlier this week, and Bruce Markuson did an interview with her that live streamed, and it is available on the Hall of Fame's channel. It's about an hour long. I highly recommend watching.
Cool. No, I can't say enough good things about her.
Same here.
And so the interview was great.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, I'm stoked. Very excited to see that. So good. Yeah, she's she a lot of these, there are some of these, and more of them, the women who just understand the importance of what they're doing, and understand the impact they can have on girls, regardless whether they play baseball. It's a big deal. And so, one of my favorite pictures that I have ever taken, we had finished up USA, and this was they got to play at Target Field. Thank you, Sean. They got to play at Target Field, where the Twins play, and it was this thrill. And this little girl comes up and has a baseball and a pen and walks up to my daughter and hands them to her, and Maggie signs an autograph for her. And I'm sitting there with my phone. I grab a picture of it, and Maggie's important to me, and important to people in our town, but you're not used to seeing that. But to have this little girl say, and this little girl was dressed in a baseball uniform, like, that's one of those, if you can see it, you can be it moments. and she won't forget that. Same thing happened in Kenosha. Oddly enough, a guy that I knew who played for the Schaumburg Flyers brought a friend of his whose daughter plays baseball to come watch the girls play. And he had been on a webinar with Maggie a couple years ago and heard the name. And so some of these young girls went over to talk to Maggie and some of her friends after the game. And you see that and you're like, all right, we can have an impact. And Kelsey gets that. And that's as a parent of a girl who plays baseball, I truly can't overstate how important that is. So yeah, I thank you for the heads up too. I'll probably watch it tomorrow.
You're welcome. You're muted.
Loren, I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening. This has been a lot of
Thank
fun.
you.
We have had one wide-ranging discussion, that's for sure. It's been a lot of very interesting information, some inside looks at some of the toys that you have when you're up there in the scorer's booth. So good stuff, man. Thanks a lot for coming out.
Thank you. I appreciate all you for having me. Thank you so much.
Glad to have you. Now, next week, Monday, October 2nd, we have a meeting that was rescheduled from earlier this summer, thanks to my wife, who, as you all know, broke her foot the night we were supposed to do this. Poor woman. We're going to be having a lively debate of Thurman Munson's Hall of Fame credentials with two very good friends of mine, Dr. Paul Semendiger and Gardner Waterman Chapter Chair, Dr. Clayton Truder. It's going to be at the usual time, 7 p.m. right here on Zoom. So join us next week for a lot of fun. Loren Foxx, thanks a lot. We appreciate you. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care. Thank you, everybody.